a while also. And thank you for being here. Yes, very special. And I'm very, very excited to share my one of my latest endeavors at the museum. Just before we begin, I start every lecture since the 7th of October, recognizing the fact that the museum, the Tel Aviv Museum, is on Hostage Square, and our work cannot be seen or thought of without mentioning the hostages that are still not yet back home. I will share my screen, and then we will be able to see my presentation. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I can also make sure that I can fix around. Okay, so Moï Ver, or Moshe Raviv, or Moshe Vorobeichic, several different names, is in the center of our talk today. And we are very, very happy to have him as an exhibition for the past 5.5 months. Now, this is most probably, I'm guessing, for a lot of people, the first time you've heard about Moshe Raviv. Since he is a photographer that you'll get to know in a minute, that has exhibited before, and pretty much has been around for a long time, but for various different reasons, he never really received the fame that he can receive, and we'll gradually discover why. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of just a biography. He was born in 1904 in a little town near Vilna, and he studied in the beginning in arts, painting. And then a very center piece of his biography is that he went to the Bauhaus in Dachau. I'll get into details to all of this, but I just want you to see that he spent time in Dachau, that's in Germany, and then he moved to Paris, okay? And then and then he went to Eretz Yisrael, Palestine, went back to Poland, and back to Israel. So not only did he change his name 3 times. Yes, he was born as Moshe Vorobeichic. When he spent time in Paris, he was Moï Ver. Sounds much more French than Vorobeichic. And when he came to Palestine and then the state of Israel, he changed to Moshe Raviv. That's not easy to keep track of somebody who changes his name so much time. Also, he changed countries, right, for different times and moved around. And also later on, we'll learn that in the 1950s, after he spent at least 2.5 decades in photography, he decided to put his camera aside and dedicate his time and the rest of his life to painting. So he was kind of brushed aside his photography career, and he was trying to highlight more his painting career, and we'll see it's a bit less successful. And maybe those are the reasons why he's a bit faded into history and not well known as today. Now, Moï Ver, and I'll refer to him probably both as Moï Ver and Moshe Raviv, according to what time of year, what time in his biography we're referring to. But if you can see, I brought to you here a few examples about what's his artistic endeavor about. And we can see immediately that we can recognize this kind of photography and put it together in what we call modernism, right? Let's say the photograph on the right-hand side, when he's photographing himself as a self-portrait, right? He's doing what we call a double exposure, okay? When you take one photograph and then you don't wind the film, but take another picture afterwards. And this he did in France. And then the picture in the center, Joseph, yes, this is a picture that he did what we call a photomontage. It's when you take one negative on top of the other, and then you screen the light through them, and you get the image from both of the negatives. And then on the left-hand side, we have faces of yesterday And here there isn't a manipulation of a double shot or a photomontage, but on the other hand, we see that he's going very, very close to his subjects and he's cropping them. You know, like today we can crop in our camera. This is like the original crop, right? With your lens, he's going very, very close. So we don't see the whole body. We don't see the background. He's playing around a lot with his photography subject, but not only with the subject, also with the negative itself, also with the image itself. And this is kind of a taste of his artistic language. And these are two self-portraits. You can see they're very playful. The one on the left, he took in the Bauhaus. So somebody's standing above him and taking the photograph, and we have this very high perspective. And the one on the right is, he took a very close up. Again, he's playing with the angles, right, of this image. Now, before this exhibition is now in Tel Aviv Museum of Art. It's actually closing next week. And before it arrived at the museum, it actually had a whole tour. Okay, it started off in Paris, in the Centre Pompidou in Paris, just about a year and a half ago. And you can see, and I'm going to show you a few installation shots from each place. So you'll be able to see how each curator, okay, took the theme of Moï Ver and the subject of Moï Ver to a different place, and how each exhibition shines a light of a different aspect on him. Now, it's interesting to understand that in the Pompidou, they actually initiated this exhibition since they received a gift of a mock-up of one of his big series. We're going to see it in a minute. And then they were in touch with the archive, okay, with the Moï Ver archive that is today in Tel Aviv, in his granddaughter's house, okay? So all of the materials, or the majority of the materials came from Tel Aviv, came from Israel, and it traveled to Paris, okay? And there they put on this show. As you can see, they also try to do some kind of timeline and show his traveling around Europe and different locations. The installation itself is a very classical photography installation. That means that the wall, the background is dark, and there's spotlight on each photograph. This is done many times in photography exhibitions, because it helps to bring out the black and white of these photographs. Okay, so we'll see it in a different place. And this is the installation of what I said of the gift, right? They received a gift. It's a mock-up of one of his series that's called Si Contre. And I'll talk much more about it later on. After it was in Paris, it traveled to another location, okay, where Moï Ver himself lived, and that is Warsaw. Okay, so it was exhibited in the Warsaw Museum of Art, okay, not Jewish museum, okay, the Contemporary Art Museum. And again, we can see a similar kind of installation, a dark background, okay. The space itself was smaller, so it's a bit more crowded up. We have in the center different tables with the different contact sheets and different information, and the walls, the photographs with it framed. They did here blow up a few of the pictures, change the color from brown to bright blue. For me, it's very odd what they did there. And here also you see the major work of the Si Contre is also exhibited in a separate wall in a very center place. Now, after it was in Paris and then Warsaw, it came to Tel Aviv. Okay, it's a collaboration between these three institutions. And we were supposed to receive all of the works and the curatorial like statement, and to use a lot of their materials in order for our exhibition. This is often done, but the problem was that October 7th happened. And unfortunately, some of the works, well, as I said, most of the works were from Tel Aviv anyway. So we didn't have something to travel, a problem to travel, but some of the works, including this centerpiece of Si Contra, were from France, were from Paris. So when we came to set up the exhibition here after the first shock of whatever was happening, et cetera, we were missing a centerpiece of the Si Contra. And also we were having a kind of like, I wouldn't say straight out problems because of the war, but like kind of trying to say, maybe you'll postpone this exhibition. You don't have to do it now. Maybe we should rethink the concept. Like we were feeling that they weren't really wanting to cooperate with us. Unfortunately, and also when we finally came to some sort of agreement, they didn't really want it to be written, not Warsaw and not Paris, that this was a collaboration between the three institutions. So I'm just saying this in parenthesis, that we are experiencing, unfortunately, in the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. As you know, it's a major art museum. We've had so many international exhibitions in the past years. We had Jeff Koons, we had Yo-Yo Kusama, we had Annette Massager, major exhibitions. Unfortunately, all of our international collaborations have put a hold in the past year. It's okay. Other things are happening. We're managing to, the fact that we're open, the fact that we have visitors coming all the time, is very important for us and for our crowd. And we are focusing now more on local art scene and local artists, and hopefully gradually we'll be back in the international scene. It may take a while. With this exhibition, in the end, what happened was that the curator of the exhibition, her name is Dr. Rona Sela, and she's a prominent photography researcher. She wrote a few books and everything. I was the assistant curator in this exhibition. So it did give us some sort of independence, right? If we weren't objective to what the Pompidou did and what the curators there, Julie Jones did, like other curators did, we can actually put our own theme or put really our own thoughts into the exhibition. So that's trying to put, turn lemons into melons in our case. First of all, you can see, if you're looking at the installation shot here in Tel Aviv, that it's very different than the previous exhibitions, right? Both in Warsaw and in Paris, they decided to have the walls dark, right? It was dark blue or dark gray. Here we do have dark walls. It's not as dark as there, but we did want a different feeling for the viewer to come in. We wanted light. So even though it may affected the depth of these black and white photographs, we really felt that we wanted the visitor to come into the hall and to be attracted to walk in, and not to see these little, let's say, thumbnails of black and white photographs that for some people who are not very maybe accustomed to photography or don't find it that interesting, they'll just turn around and walk out and look into a different gallery. So our intention was to try and bring in people, right? Attract them, give them something maybe to make them walk in. So we try and keep the light, keep it bright. Okay, we divided it into very clear chapters. So it is more or less a chronological exhibition. Some places we grouped works together, but we did try to stick to some sort of chronology. And you can see that we have clear text chapters for each one of these periods of times of Moshe Raviv. Now here, but what I said beforehand, if you remember, the centerpiece, both in Warsaw and in Paris, was the Si Contra, right? And since the war was happening, and still is, we can't bring in works from abroad. There's no insurance. okay? Even if they were willing to lend it to us, we couldn't insure the works. So we were left with a big problem. How can we have an exhibition of Moï Ver without having one of his major works? Now, I'm giving you a bit of a spoiler because you see on the wall here that we did manage. It's a different version. It's a different, now I'll explain a bit further when we get to it, but at least we managed to clear out this obstacle, and it's received excellent reviews, and many visitors have been attracted to see this exhibition. So during my rest of my presentations, I'll get to the si contra and how we managed to take it together. Okay, so now a bit more about the photographs themselves and about his work. And I'm sure if you have questions and everything, Shirel, or you can stop me, or later on, I'll leave time in the end. So as I said before, yes.
Just one thing, when you speak of each photograph, can you use your cursor to point at it? So that
well, let's see. Can you see it? Can you see
yes,
mine?
it's
Okay,
a little
sure.
small, but yes, we can see. Thank you.
Okay. So he was born in 1904 in a little town near Vilna. And then as a kid, when he was 10 or 11, they moved to Vilna. And this is where he grew up among the Jewish community. His family was traditional, not necessarily observant, but he was part of the community there. Now, I said beforehand, he went to the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was a fantastic art school that many very big artists were or studied there or were teachers there. I'm talking, let's say, Vitaly Kandinsky, Paul Klee, and for our subject, a photographer called, oh, let me see, I'm jumping a bit forward. So this is the Bauhaus. You can see this is his student card from the Bauhaus. This is how on the left, how the Bauhaus looks today. What was special about this art school is the fact that in the first year, they had a foundation year, okay? So they tried a little bit of each subject, of painting, of crafts, of wood, like they had workshops and very good teachers. And in the second year, they got to choose their major field. And this is very difficult different from classical academia. Yes, in the classical academia, for the first year, you just paint still life. And afterwards, you paint from sculptures. And only in the third year did you paint from models. Like it's very different, and it did change things around. So Vorobeichic was there between 1927 to 1928. Now, the first series of work that you can see here, he went back in one of his vacations back to his childhood house, to his parents, and he started photographing Vilna. And you can see these are like classical black and white photographs, which are like pre-Holocaust in our recognition. That's what we think of. But if we start, and he did a lot of photographs, so there's a big archive to search, but we can see that he's tasting it. He's trying to use a different kind of language. These are not direct photographs. Look at the angles, okay? Look at the close-ups. When he goes into the synagogue to here I'm talking to this bottom one, to photograph the books, he goes below them and photographs them from underneath above. So he's really testing this tool, testing his camera, and all of these works in the end were published in a fantastic little book that you can maybe try and find today on eBay, called The Ghetto Lane in Vilna. And it was published over 12,000 copies, both in Yiddish, Hebrew, and English, okay? And he took these photographs, and look at this. He cuts them up, he multiplies them, he juxtaposes them one next to another. These are not direct photographs of the ghetto lane in Vilna. These are like avant-garde, right? These are totally using the photograph as a material in order to play around, in order to test the composition. Not only that, he's also you can see very connected to the graphic work, to the graphic thought. Because not only does he cut and paste and multiply his photograph, he's also looking at this concept of what is a book? What is a page in a book? Where do I place the picture within this page and one next to another? And what you see here, these past two slides, are in our exhibition. The book itself is very small, so we couldn't see. We wanted to show these beautiful layouts in a better way. So we took the original negatives, okay? We printed from the negatives and we created these, let's say, blown up images of the double spread pages from the book, okay? So this was very, very creative, also very different than things that were done beforehand. And also for us, a very different way to look at the Jewish area in Vilna later on. Now here we can see not only is he photographing in a different way, he's also now playing around with the negatives. So in both of these pictures, he's doing what we call a photomontage, okay? It's when you take two negatives, as I said beforehand, and you're placing them one on top of the other, or you're shifting them around or moving them outside the frame. So he is trying to understand the different opportunities that he can use his camera with and use the negative afterwards with. So this, and then later on, he graduated from the Bauhaus, as I said before. These are two figures that were very, very influential on his work. On the left, we have Lischitz. Lischitz was not a teacher in the Bauhaus exactly when he was, but in a different time. But on one of his vacations, he went to see an exhibition called Pressa. Pressa was a very international exhibition that was happening at the time. And he saw works of Lischitz. He was also a Jewish artist from Russia. Maybe some of you know he's done some fantastic work. And he saw these photomontage and his graphic work, and he was very influenced by it. And the other figure is Moholy Nagy, a Hungarian artist. And he was a teacher at the time in the Bauhaus. And he was the one that was introducing photography into the Bauhaus, okay? In the beginning, when Moï Ver started off there, they did not have photography as a class. And only later on did it happen. You have to think of it, it's a certain point of time that photography in the beginning, in its first 100 years, was really there in order to represent reality. Okay, when the camera was invented, of course, it caused a huge change and shift in the art world. This is talking about all of the modernist painting and impressionist, etc., etc. And what it did in the beginning, it was there to document life around in a very easy, simple, very inexpensive way. And only later on, and this is the beginning, 1920s, did artists see the camera and photography as a way of expression within itself, okay? And this is what we call the modernist movement in photography, okay? I'm showing you here another album that we have here on exhibit in Tel Aviv, and it's called in Yiddish, Schleures of Narch, and it's kind of like a humoristic way of saying, I don't know, like students who are on the Narch River, okay? And on purposely, I didn't come close to show you what is in each photograph, because as you see, it's less important for Moï Ver at this point. What he's trying to do is to play around with the image and the composition and this geometrical shape, if it's a line or if it's a rectangle. And this is, whoever knows Lischitz's work is very, very close to what Lischitz did. And I'm sure Sherel afterwards in the follow-up email can send you a few links and you can see the similarities of it. So again, he's not necessarily looking at the end way of what a photograph is representing, okay? That's not what he is. He's using the photographs in order to represent an idea and other artistic views. After that, in the 1930s, after he graduated from Bauhaus, of course, what did
Sophia?
all the, yes?
I'm just stopping you for one question because you mentioned he's using it to express other artistic views. Can you say something about like what was he trying to achieve with these geometric designs?
Okay, and with the geometric, I'll show it, and I'll show this in this example, in the example here of this work. So when he was in Paris, and if it's not clear afterwards, you're welcome to ask me again. So when he was in Paris, he studied again a bit more art and with Leger and got really connected with different artists at the time, 1930s in Paris, the place to be. And he created another book. As you see, this is something that reoccurs with him. He likes working in series and he likes composing it in a book. And he created an album that's called Paris. And these are photographs from Paris. And as you see, these are not photographs that you can actually recognize a place in Paris, okay? He's not documenting Paris for tourists. He's trying to catch the atmosphere or catch a moment in time that what has happened in the hustling, bustling of the city itself, okay? So maybe in this album, it's not Paris, it's something else. He's capturing a moment in time, I would say. This book, so we have here, first of all, on the left, the first book of his, The Ghetto Lane in Vilna and Paris, okay? And now soon we're going to talk about the Sea Contra. And on the bottom, Schleures, okay? So look at all these. He was so prolific. He was working all the time. And I'm just showing you a little bit about how many publications he was working on nearly at the same time, okay, within 3 or 4 years. Paris was a great success. It sold over 1,000 copies and ran out of print, and really caused him to be part of the photographic milieu in Paris at the time. Now, this is the point when he changed his name from Moshe Vorobeichic to Moï Ver. So all of you can probably understand, walking around Paris then, and also today, I guess, with Moshe Vorobeichic, Moïse Vorobeichic is not the greatest thing. So a friend suggested maybe you should change your name to sound something more international. And that's when he adopted Moï Ver. So this is 1931. He was in the center of attention, working also for magazines now, and receiving commissions. And this is his next artistic endeavor, is what we say the Sea Contra. Now, Sea Contra in French means opposed to each other, just opposed to each other, right? Putting one and comparing it one to another. And you can see already, the whole series is made out of a couple, 2 images that are placed side by side. Soon I'll go into a few to go into details, but to see the whole thing together, we can start to see that some of the images here are connected to each other because of the theme, yes, the subject. We have 2 faces here on the bottom left, on the bottom right. And some of the images are connected because of the texture. Let's say circles and circles. Some of the images are maybe connected because maybe the subject matter, and sometimes they're one parallel to each other, and one will be horizontal and one vertical. That means that he finds these images that he took, that he did. Some of them are photomontaging, some of them are close-ups, some of them are direct pictures with angles, okay? And he finds, he's looking for an image that will complement it. And it's very intuitive. It's not like he has a method or a way, this will work with this. It's searching for something that will be interesting for the viewer, for the eye. Now, here are examples. of how we different pairs of images that he put together. So you can see on the left here, this is a photo montage, and this is also a photo montage, but these are people walking, and this is the street post. So the subject is similar, but I even can't really verbalize it because it is very unclear. You can say, that interesting together. Here, maybe the hair of the woman here, which is a beautiful photograph as itself, with the hair of the doll here. But both of them are a bit strange, right? One is upside down and one, her hair is totally going, is a great mess. And here, probably the texture between the both trees. Now, as I said before, in the Pompidou and in Warsaw, they were exhibiting also the Sikontra, and it couldn't come here. Now, what happened was that Moï Ver created it in 1932, and he sent it to a German publishing house, the mock-up of this Sikontra, for it to be published. And it took a bit of time. Sometimes these projects, as you know, you have to find the right person to support it and the publishing house, and it didn't happen. In 1933, when the Nazis came into power in Germany, he lost touch with the publishing house, and he thought that his mock-up was lost. So during the years in the 1940s, he created 2 more mock-ups, okay? Only later on did he discover that the original was kept. Now, what you see here is what in French they call a maquette. It's a mock-up, right? And you can see he's taking different images. You can see his handwriting, one next to each other, and his frame, how he liked it to be placed. It's also important to understand, okay, it's not enough to have one image next to another, but are they going to be parallel? Are they going to be one above each other? Or how close are they going to be? That's also part of the work itself. In the Pompidou, they were exhibiting one of these mock-ups. That's what they received, okay? What we did is we found original photographs that Moshe Raviv, that Moï Ver printed for an exhibition in Cologne that was in 1987. This was the only time that he exhibited the Sikontra, okay? So we found the original prints. They were all scattered around. They weren't paired up. But since we had these photographs, we understood exactly how he exhibited them. And we felt that it's trustworthy enough for us to do the same in our exhibition. So that's how we could overcome this obstacle about not having a major work. But in the end, we made, completed it by having the real original prints in a full size, exactly how Raviv did it himself. Okay, was that understood, Shirin? Are we okay?
Yeah, it was understood. I have many questions coming up about it, but we'll wait to the end.
Okay. Okay, I'll continue on. Don't worry, we'll leave it. We'll have time for questions in the end. Okay, 1932, after he did Paris, okay? Now listen, one more thing about the Sikontra. The Sikontra, in the end, as I said, the original mock-up was discovered, but it wasn't published. It was only published in 2004 after Raviv died in 1995. So Raviv never got to see the Sikontra published as a book, only as an exhibition. And these things are available to buy on eBay and that kind of thing. They're a bit pricey, but at the museum we have a few copies, and I want to tell you, every person that I showed it to them is like, wow, because there's something, a magic that happens in an exhibition and also in a book. When you turn over the pages, there's a rhythm, there's a color that's happening, the composition is complementary to each other. It's really a masterpiece. And many other artists who also create books state Moï Ver as one of their sources of inspiration for a photography book. Okay. back to his history. So he visited Palestine 1932 for the first time in order to create a photojournalist article for the Vous magazine. It's a French magazine. I'm showing you one of the photographs that was published there, and a lady at the Kotel, at the Western Wall. And again, think of this photograph. It's showing everything a bit upside down, a bit crooked, a different angle. This is not a direct photograph. If any of us would go and see the Kotel for the first time, probably our angles would be straight. Probably we try to have her in the center, see maybe a bit of the background. He has a different idea of how he's going to use his camera. And then after that, he spent time in Paris, Eretz Yisrael, and he eventually moved to Palestine, 1934, but he traveled back and forth quite a few times until the war broke out. One of these trips, 1937, again, you can see he went back to the Jewish neighborhoods, and he's photographing these beggars, old people. And what is he doing? He's playing around with them. He's cutting them up, creating collages, quite a bit of humor around here also. Something that we were very surprised to see. If we think about the images that we have pre-Holocaust juries, usually it's not this kind of thing. And by the way, he's a great documentation of the pre-war Jewish life, and he has appeared in various different exhibitions under that topic also. He photographed not only Jews, also non-Jews in different markets and different atmospheres. As you see here, these are more direct photographs. These are more like photo a journalist would have taken. And of course, these pictures remind us of another famous picture, which is more or less the same time, the American photographer Dorothea Lange, who also went around America trying to document a certain period of time. We are not sure if he knew her work or not, but you can't ignore the similarities of both of these photographs. Again, these are images where he's cutting it up, playing around, looking at it from different aspects. Another one of his projects, in 1937, he went around Poland and he photographed what is called the Hachsharot. Hachsharot are groups of young people who came together before they came to Israel, before they came to, well, not to Israel, but to Palestine, Israel, in order to start understanding how it is to live in a kibbutz, what is agriculture, to prepare themselves, okay? To prepare themselves to come and live together here. And there were many hachsharot, and he went and he documented them, and then he used to go to these different organizations, Zionistic organizations, to sell the photographs, and that's how he made a living. Again, you can see here the angles, the diagonal angles, the long images. For example, this man here. He's not really interested to showing who the man is. He's interested in the line that whatever the man is carrying causing to his composition. Okay? Again here, when he photographs the man behind the horses plowing the field, on purpose, he's catching him in a diagonal. We'll see this reoccurring later on again. This is the map of the various different hachsharot, just to show you how many of them were. Okay, hundreds. And these are more images of the young people working and getting to know the Zionistic movement. Now we have another chapter in his life, and that's the period of time that he spent in Israel. And you can see that these are images, what we call of the new Jew, okay, as opposed of the Jews that were in Poland. the Zionistic movement wanted to use photography for more propaganda reasons. They wanted to attract young people to come to live in the country. And they photographed the people as strong, as looking out to the future, usually working, very images that are very fascinating. Of course, this is language that we can see that is used in other authority governments, if it's in Russia, in order to promote the social nationalism movement, and also even, of course, in Germany, you know, when they photograph the German soldiers or the German young people, they're also photographing from below towards above, strong images, because that's the language that was used. Now, think of this. Moshe Raviv or Moï Ver adjusted his language. There's still angles, but there aren't as many photomontages as we saw beforehand. It's not as playful as it was in Paris. Now he was under a more significant, let's say, code that he had to obey in order to use his photographs for publications. So the Zionist movement wanted to show people a certain way of who is in the country, and this is how they wanted people to photograph. And Raviv had to obey this figure. He didn't mind it. Yes, he was very pro the ideas, but we see his style is changing. He did a lot of different graphic work for quite a long time. He worked in different publications, in newspapers, and he did posters and books of the time. Sometimes he's using his photographs, and sometimes he's dedicated for the graphic design. Now, these photographs, of course, very much remind us of the photographs that he took in Poland of the Hachsharot, but now he's taking very similar photographs, but now it's in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so this is in Eretz Yisrael. Again, similar images, the diagonals, the healthy young man working, etc., etc. And it's interesting, when we did the research, sometimes it was very difficult for us to understand where was the photograph taken. Was it in Poland or in Eretz Yisrael? Because they were so similar. And the images looked very much the same, and the young faces were very much the same. A little bit about his personal life. Wow, I don't even know how to start, because today we are in touch with his son and his grandchildren, and they're really, really supportive and very interested, and have really opened up their house to us in order for us to learn about Moshe Raviv. Raviv was actually married for the first time to Rosalind in Poland, in Warsaw, and that's the photograph that you see here of Liliana and Rosalind, his wife. And this is from a visit that he was in Poland in 1937. At the time, he already was in Palestine, but he couldn't receive a certificate for them to leave Poland. Now, they survived the war. They survived the Holocaust, the mother and the child. But in the meantime, while Raviv was in Eretz Yisrael, he already set up a new family. And he got married again, and he had 2 children, okay, Yossi and Maya. And Yossi, the one on the right-hand side here, is the son that we are in touch today. Now, the interesting fact is, once Liliana survived the war, she came and lived in Tel Aviv, near the family. I can say that until today, they have close relationships between the families. So somehow it's a different time, different period of time, and they managed to get along. Eventually, after 20 years in Tel Aviv, she moved to Canada, and today she has descendants there. Raviv has descendants there. But he did, for a period of time, have kind of maybe a double life. Not too much I know about, but but it is to say that the families are very supportive and get along with each other. Now, towards the 1950s, Raviv moved to Tzfat. He really connected to the place. He said that Tzfat, the streets of Tzfat remind him of Vilna, of his childhood. And we can understand that the narrow alleys, right, and the Hasidic images are similar to what he experienced as a child. And gradually, he shifts towards another kind of another kind of language that he creates in his photographs, because you can see here, they're much softer, right? There aren't the diagonals. They're a bit further away, the remote. The light is different. And definitely, you kind of try and feel the spiritual feeling that we feel when we go to Tzfat. Now, Raviv was very much affected by mysticism, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, and the Zohar, and he started studying the Zohar. And look at these images, and look that they're on the top right here of the grave, I think it's Bar Yochai or somebody's grave, and the light here, and then this is his next stage that I told you that in the end he dedicates himself to painting, and then look at this painting over here and how the image is similar to the lights that we see in his photographs. So in the 1954 is more or less the last series of photographs that he does. And then he lives till 1995. So there's a few more years where he does watercolors, oils, and other artistic images. But as you see, they're different. They're not really the photographs that we've seen before. And I don't know, for various different reasons, the taste of the time, and these works weren't as accepted as widely as his photographs. So during his last 20 years, he had various different exhibitions, both in Israel and abroad, but mainly the institutions were looking at his works for photographs during the Bauhaus, the Sikontra in Paris, and that area, and not so much as his latest work and his paintings. And he talks about it. He says that he's a bit disappointed. He would like to be known as a painter, not necessarily only as a photographer. And maybe that's also why he didn't promote himself so much, because at the end he felt maybe he was a bit missed out. Anyway, today I can say that he is very much well recognized to have 3 major shows in Europe and in Israel in the past 2 years is a very big thing. There's a big catalog that was published in the Pompidou in French, and we published a catalog in Hebrew, and hopefully we're going to have one in English. And finally, I can say that he does receive much more research and light than he did in previous years. So, great. I'm just in time, because if there are questions, we have enough time for me to answer them.
Thank you, Sophia. If I can ask you just to stop the share so we have you full screen. And I do want to mention what you already know, that we have on this call both children of Lillian, Daniel, and Jonathan Falk are with us on this call. Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
And I love that you wrote that the 2 families of Moshe Raviv are in fact quite close today. I love the apprentices in the 2 families, and it's wonderful to have you on this call too. I'm going to ask a few questions because we're short on time, and I did receive quite a few. So first of all, stepping back to what you decided to do with the Sikontre, because when photography is reproduced, there are additions, there's pricing, there's value. So how does that decision come to be? Who had to authorize it? What do you do with the photographs afterwards? And how
but they were all, the Sikontre is all original photographs of Aviv, okay? Of course, okay? We did not reproduce things as saying, oh, these were prints of Aviv. No, we did that twice in the exhibition. And that's when we made the pages of the ghetto lane larger and in a different place. And in both places, we didn't frame the works in order to make a difference between what is original print and what is our print. And in the end of the exhibition, we'll have to destroy the reprints because we don't want them going around the world and people claiming to say, oh, these are original Moï Vers.
Thank you. Another question, have you received any kind of connection or communication from either the Pompidou or the museum in Warsaw following the exhibition you created? Did you in the end mention their collaboration or not? Can you say a bit about that?
Listen, it's all done very politically correct, very, behind, not saying very much. We did not receive the recognition, they didn't ask for installation shots. It's not like they were very interested, but on the other hand, I don't know how much it's the institution's visions or the curators themselves. I think it's more the institutions. And I think that both curators that worked on the exhibitions in Poland and in Paris are supportive of the exhibition and would like to know a bit more, but I don't know if they can.
And is this exhibition going to travel further, or is this the last stop?
No, at the moment, this is the last stop. Next week, we're dismantling the show. The pictures are going to be taken out of the frames, and in the end, they're going to be returned back to the archive, which is in Tel Aviv. I know that many institutions have been interested, and who knows? I hope that his work is going to be traveling a bit more now.
Thank you. Another question was about, is there any writing that Moï Ver himself wrote about his journey and way and the ideas behind the photographs he took, or is it all stuff that's written about him?
No, he actually did write quite a bit in his later years, kind of retrospective writing about his years in the Bauhaus and different memories. So there is firsthand ideas. He was also a great collector. So any little piece of paper, any little pamphlet that he had was kept. I can't say that it was very well organized when we found it all together, but there was a lot of material for us to research. And the curators from the Pompidou and later on Rona Sella, who curated this exhibition, spent a lot of time just looking and documenting the artifacts. And I just want to say one word about this. A lot of the exhibitions in the museum are not necessarily what we call research exhibitions. We have one-man show or more contemporary works. But an exhibition like this, where so much time and effort was invested in the research prior for the exhibition, I'm talking 2 or 3 years of research. Okay, that's a lot. Are very, very rarely done because for a museum, it's not usually very economical to invest so much time in a single exhibition because we're nonprofit. It's not like we sell the works afterwards, but all of these institutes felt that this was important enough to have the resources put towards this exhibition. And it was a joint kind of research experiment of all of these institutions.
Another question, because you mentioned how the war affected the making of this exhibition, and still the museum found it important to have this exhibition and not to postpone it, even though that came as a suggestion from the Pompidou and the Warsaw Museum. Can you say something about how you see the importance of having this type of exhibition during this time in the museum?
Wow, that's a great question. And I want to say that really we struggle with it every day. As I said beforehand, the museum itself is on Hostage Square, and the reality is like in our face all the time. And we've had exhibitions during the past year that are more closely linked to the happenings of the 7th of October. Again, not directly. And the museum is very, very careful about that, okay? There's a lot of different documentation. There's a lot of artists who feel and want to express what's going over them. But the museum really wants to try and keep to both its artistic truth, and both in order not to be too close to reality, because the reality is there, as I said. So we have this very, very light balance. And after a few months, we understood that what we need to do, what our goal, what we can help the public is with exhibitions, with art, with a place for a little bit to break away from our everyday life, see different things. And that is our power. So we are balancing it out, and we understand that for our crowd, for our public, it is important to have various different exhibitions, even though, it's very difficult what we're all experiencing. It's not easy. It's a very tight balance. As I said in my opening words, it exists with us all the time, and we try and find different ways to connect and relate as much as we can.
One last question, or it's two kind of put
Sure.
together. Did he teach? And was there anything that you did in the museum or a course that teaches how to create these types of books or collages following his inspiration?
I think he taught, not very much. And I had a few people who came up to say, yes, he was our teacher in some sort of time. I think it was more in high school, kind of art teacher. He did other work, as I said, graphic design and that kind of thing. It's not so much as teacher. He was from what I can see, yes, a very reachable, touchable person, very human, wanted to have interaction with people and loved to talk. And did the museum. We had a lot of different programs. We had gallery talks. We had Victoria Hana coming to sing in the gallery. We had lectures. But we haven't had maybe workshops about how to create a masterpiece, one of these books. But what we did do, which was really, really interesting, we invited 3 contemporary photographers, okay? Avishag Yashuv, Vardi Kahana, and Eti Schwartz. And each one of them was different, comes from a different field of photography. And we asked them, each one, to choose a group of works of Moshe Raviv, and to talk about it, to see what they, to explain what they see and how they relate to it. And that was a beautiful evening. Unfortunately, it's all in Hebrew, so I have but I do have a documentation of Victoria Hana singing at the gallery. And
That's lovely. We also had Victoria Hana on a CSP program, so
yes. That's why I said, because I'm sure you probably know of her and her special. And she also did a very, very interesting interpretation of the works. She was walking between the works, singing a lullaby, and then singing something to do about pioneers, and in her crazy way. So it was great.
Thank you. So maybe one day you'll offer CSP a course of creating a book.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Just throwing it out there.
I do
travelers.
I said to somebody, I said that if I would do an exhibition now of Moï Ver, I would choose to do an exhibition only of his publications. Because I think that's really, really interesting to understand how invested he was in creating books or publications. And it's really a different kind of method as an exhibition, when each photograph is a part, and a book is a different kind of constellation. So for sure, there's more material. And thank you all for being part. I enjoyed very, very much. Thank you, Shirel. And I hope we get to see each other soon also.